Welcome to Reports from Our Broth. This episode is brought to you by Warwick Spice. Learn more at warwickspice.co.uk.
Hello and welcome to Reports from Our Broth. Our very special guest today was born in Birmingham, 374 miles from Arbroath, and he's one of the top cricketers of his generation. He's travelled all over the world, starring in international and franchise cricket, although he is still to visit Arbroath. He's a World Cup winner in 50 and 20 over formats, and he's been a pillar of the England team for 10 years, having played 212 games for his country across the formats. Chris Woakes is unfurling a splendid career, and underpinning it all is a lot of hard work, a lot of skill, and a love of Aston Villa. And it's the latter that we're going to chat about today. Chris, welcome to Reports from Arbroath.
Thanks for having me, Brian. Really nice to join you on your podcast, on your new adventure.
Well, it's great to have you. Why Aston Villa?
Why Aston Villa? I was kind of forced into it a little bit by the old man. He was a big Villa fan. And from a very young age, I was 5, I believe, when they won the League Cup in '94. And that was kind of on repeat on VHS in our house for years until the following League Cup win in 1996. And I just remember watching them, falling in love. I suppose I think that's what naturally as a young lad or a young person, whatever it is, whenever you watch a team, you want them to win, don't you? Naturally, and they were winning at the time, which was great. And I think if I'd have supported anyone else, I'd have been kicked out of the house. So that was the reason Aston Villa, mainly through my dad. And I suppose those 2 League Cup wins in '94 and '96 were big in kind of pushing me into that, I suppose.
Can you recall the first game you went to?
Yeah, I think it was against Derby County. I wasn't much older than 7 or 8 or something like that, and I went with an uncle of mine, and I just remember barely watching a ball kicked. Really, I remember coming up the steps and overlooking the pitch and just being in awe of the ground, in awe of Villa Park, and fell in love immediately then. But I remember just watching everyone swear around me more than watch the game itself. But from that moment on, I was hooked. That was it.
And did you become a regular quite soon? Could you get there often?
Yeah, I didn't go all too often until I had a season ticket when I was roughly a teenager. I was about 14, something like that, 14, 15, 16. And I had a season ticket in the lower Holt end, and from that moment on, it was, I was just trying to go to as many games as I possibly could. It was a little bit tricky around the Saturday 3 p.m. kickoffs, because at that point in my early cricketing career, I was starting to play league cricket on a Saturday afternoon, so had to kind of juggle that a little bit. But it was amazing to be able to spend time at Villa Park. I've had some good days and some bad days, as you'd imagine, but incredible venue to go and watch sport. I love it. It's probably my favourite ground in the world, cricket, football, whatever.
There have been some good days and some bad days, some good ones at the moment, aren't there? But just going back to those early days as well, of course, you were decent at football as well, weren't you, in the Walsall youth system for a while? Yeah,
that's right, Brian. I was with Walsall from around probably about 11, 12 through till I was about 14, 15, and then I was under contract until 16, but I gave it a bit of a knock on the head at 14 to concentrate on my cricket. I was just getting into the academy at Warwickshire, and I made the decision, really, a decision which I made with my dad and my parents, and just said, look, I'm really enjoying my cricket, not so much enjoying my football, and decided to take the cricket route a little bit more serious. But I think the reason for that was I actually was, I was half decent footballer, but I didn't grow much through that sort of, early teenage years. I just remember getting belted and just getting whacked in the middle of the park. Well, I was in the middle of the park at that stage, and then I moved out to the wing because of my size. I think I wasn't that big, and around that age, lads get bigger, don't they? And young boys were turning into men with beards, and I was still a puny little 11-year-old in my body, and I just getting kicked about, and I stopped enjoying it as much.
That's the good thing about cricket, isn't it? There's no tackling.
Yeah, well, that helps. Although I suppose there is a hard ball involved, which is kind of similar in a way.
Some of your predecessors at Warwickshire and Villa have played both, haven't you? Jack Divvy, way back, was captain of Aston Villa when they won the FA Cup. I mean, does part of you think if the itineraries were different, you could have played for England in cricket and captained Villa to win the FA Cup?
Yeah, I mean, I've had that dream many a times, right? But not in reality, I don't think. Even we're going back 20, 25 years, but I don't think I would have been good enough to make it at a good level. You know what I mean? When I say a good level, I mean in the higher leagues. You never know. Maybe I could have done something further down and made a career out of it. But sport's fickle, isn't it? You need doors and windows to open at the right times. And fortunately for me, from a cricketing point of view, it opened. I decided to throw all my eggs into that basket, and I can't moan with where I'm at, I suppose.
Your Aston Villa connection was going to be as a fan, and I guess cricket commitments prevented you watching them as much as you liked, but they've been a pretty constant thread through all your life. Wherever you've travelled, keep an eye on the Villa.
It's probably the one thing, until I had, a wife and kids, that did follow me around wherever I went. Whether that be travelling with England, travelling with Warwickshire, I would always be, keen to look at the scores, watch the games, follow the games. Doesn't matter what time zone I'm in. I'm always looking to try and watch. Often in the middle of the night, whether it be in Australia or India or something like that. I've watched many games from obviously different continents, but yeah, it's always been something which stayed with me. I think when you have a love and a passion for a team, or it's your team and you support that team through thick and thin, you'll do anything to follow them and watch them, whether you're winning or losing. And as you said, so many tough times watching Villa. More recently, 6 or 7 years ago, when we were stuck in the Championship for a few years, but you stick with them through thick and thin. I wouldn't have changed it for anything.
You have spent plenty of your time in hotel rooms around the world, in India and all these places. I guess Villa is a connection with home, isn't it? Because there's 1 or 2 winters when you've hardly seen home, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. It is something which draws you back to Birmingham. I mean, my love for Birmingham is it's probably a little bit too much occasionally. People give Birmingham a bit of a bad name, and I make sure I give them a bit of a saying to, and say, I love that city, it's my home city and all that sort of jazz. But it does connect you to home. It connects you to friends, family. Most of the people that I went to school with are either Villa fans or West Bromwich fans, and there's always a bit of banter knocking around. So it's whether it be with mates or with family, you're always talking about the club, talking about the football. It's been a big part of my life. So, regardless of where I am in the world, I always want to follow it and keep it up to date. And as you say, it connects you to home when you're away from home for a long period of time. And the Warwickshire and England dressing rooms, I'm guessing, are full of football supporters as well. So I'm sure there's plenty of banter in there. And when Villa were in the Championship, you probably got a bit of stick. Now you can hand a bit out, maybe, because they're flying. Yeah, it's been an incredible couple of years. To see them going from strength to strength, and I suppose to see them in Champions League nights is something which I haven't seen as a fan since obviously there's a lot of talk about the 82 European Cup win, but obviously a fair few years before I was around. So to see them involved with those nights is just, it's a kind of pinch your moment, sort of pinch yourself sort of stuff, because I never really dreamt of it. I never really thought it'd be possible. You see the big clubs, the likes of Real Madrid and in the Manchester United, the Manchester Cities playing all these games on a Tuesday and a Wednesday night, and you never really think you're ever going to be a part of that. So to see the club doing that is just amazing, and grateful to be able to be a small part of it and see. Again, it'll be part of the history, so it's amazing to be a part of. And they've travelled a long way in the last few years, haven't they? The first decade of this century wasn't the greatest for Villa, was it? Drifting a little bit, and then all of a sudden it down in the Championship. Dean Smith takes them up, and since then, wow. Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned Dean Smith, obviously being a local lad. He's originally from Great Bar, which is where I'm from, and to see him bring the club back, which is a club that obviously he supports, that's just brilliant to see. To see a local lad take over his boyhood club, as a manager, and take them from, where were we, 14th, 15th in the Championship, back into the Premier League. That'll be with him forever. It'll be with the club forever. And that's just, it's brilliant. It's really, really nice to see. But like you say, there's some tough years there. And, we talk about sliding doors moments, as I've mentioned. That championship playoff final against Derby that we got over the line and won, if you don't win that, God knows where the club would be now. We could easily still be in the Championship and, who knows, even lower. And yeah, to think, the contrast where they were to where they are now is just, you don't see it happen very often. I think that's the thing. You become as a football fan all around the world, all around the country. You can be very fickle, can't you? And you kind of demand. But to think we're in the Champions League and we were 14th in the Championship, a bit of perspective needs to be taken.
It must be quite nice for you in a way, as a professional sportsman who plays at the top level. When you go out there to play for England, there are millions of people looking at you and wanting you to do well or badly if you're on the opposition camp. To turn up and just watch, is that just quite nice in itself, or is it even more tense because you can't affect what's going on?
There's a little bit of that. And I think naturally, as a football fan or a sports fan, you always think you can do it better, and you do slip into that mode very, very occasionally. In my case, but I do always try and put a perspective on it. I always try and remember that these guys are like highly skilled. They're at the very, very top of their profession. As I believe I am or have been in the past, and sometimes you get an abuse, and you're like, come on, I'm trying as hard as I can here. I practice. I do this day in, day out. Occasionally you can get it wrong or whatever. We're all human beings, and I occasionally slide into that mode where you expect too much from them. But I do try and look at it in a certain perspective and in a certain light, and just remember these guys are serious athletes, seriously good at what they do. They practice day in, day out, and to actually, it just shows that people can still make mistakes. But it is nice to just go and watch, and I really enjoy watching any sport at the highest level. To see people that are at the top of their craft doing what they do extremely well is great to watch. And obviously seeing Villa do it is something even more special. But I do try and have a little bit of sympathy, I suppose, as well, that people can get it wrong. You do make mistakes, and it's not always perfect, is it?
I guess as someone in professional sport, you do have that empathy, don't you? But you say that in the calm of this room now, but if a Villa defender shanks one straight into the crowd, what was that?
I do slide into that occasionally, right? As I said, I try not to do it often, but sometimes the emotion gets the better of you. And I think that's my passion for Villa is sometimes you do fall into that sort of typical football fan character, category where you're like, why has he done that? Why has he passed it there? Or, why does he not just shoot? Why does he not just knock it past the keeper? And then I think, why have I just said that? These blokes or players are so good. They're not robots. So,
do you find when you get to Villa Park, I guess you're on football, your time off, isn't it? This is your downtime. But I guess people come up to Chris and want to talk about cricket.
A little bit.
Is that something that, in a really nice way, you could do without, because this is your football time? Yeah,
I still be able to. I can relax and get away from cricket. I occasionally get the odd person pop up to me and say hello or want a picture or have a chat, as you said. But I don't mind that. It's quite a nice level of I don't know what you want to call it, whether you want to call it fame or being noticed. It's quite a nice level because it's not like every man and his dog is coming up to you, but the occasional supporter will come up and say hello or want a photo or something. So which is quite nice. But it's also nice to have that sort of connection with the local sort of community, I suppose, like in terms of being a lad from Birmingham and supporting a local club. A lot of the people that do come up to me are also local people from the area, and it's nice to have that connection, I suppose.
You've spoken about your affection for Birmingham. Of course, that must also extend to Birmingham City.
I knew this would come up, right? I knew you'd say that. Unfortunately, it doesn't. But it is, in a weird way, nice to see them doing well, because we all want the second City derby coming back. We always want to play against each other because I know plenty of Blues fans. I know Villa fans are in the category where they're desperate to see the local derbies, and they're flying. So hopefully that happens soon.
Yeah, happy days for both big second City clubs at the moment. For Villa especially, we've mentioned Europe. Hopefully an FA Cup final. Crystal Palace coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a semi-final of an FA Cup is, it's a huge fixture now, especially with it being played at Wembley. It's a bit of a bogey team, Crystal Palace, so I'm a little worried, a little concerned about that game. But the fact that it's at Wembley, hopefully, a neutral venue will play a big part. And yeah, to get to another FA Cup final would be amazing, and hopefully to lift the trophy would be incredible. I think to lift the trophy, as I said, I think the last one would have been '96, which obviously was a League Cup win. So yeah, it would be incredible to see us lift the trophy, and they're so hard to win, aren't they? It doesn't matter what competition. As obviously we saw Newcastle win the League Cup a few weeks back, and to see what it meant to their fans, it's just shows. I mean, the FA Cup would be an incredible win, really would.
If someone had said to a Villa fan about 8 years ago, would you rather get past PSG in the Champions League or win the FA Cup?
Yeah,
they'd have got a fairly crude response, I think.
Yeah, you're right. It's impossible to think that, as you say, 7 or 8 years ago that we'd have been in this situation. So, you can't be beggars can't be choosers, so to speak. And we're in a position where we obviously have had a chance in a couple of competitions and still going well in the league. But the problem is, as a fan, you want it all, don't you? You want it all, you really do. But I think it's important that they hopefully get over the line in that FA Cup. That'd be, still 3 other great teams in the competition. So we'll see. But fingers crossed.
Lovely stuff, Chris. Just finally, what's the score going to be between Crystal Palace and Aston Villa?
Semi-final prediction. I'm going to go with. They always score against us, so I'm going to go 2-1 Villa. 2-1 Villa.
That'd be cool.
Yep.
Chris, many thanks.
Cheers, Brian.
Reports from Arbroath is an Orion Creative Services production. To listen to more episodes, to read our blog, or to join our mailing list, please visit reportsfromarbroath.com.